What's going on, everybody? This is George Khalifa, and it's episode 26 of Let's Grab Coffee. I'm here with Marc, the co-founder of Keo app. Right here, we're going to talk a bit about it. This app is super cool. It's all around mindfulness. It's all about being introspective, reflective, and asking the right questions to better yourself. This app became the app of the day on the Apple Store with literally no marketing, like no promotions, no ads on Instagram, no sponsored content on Facebook. And the ride and the momentum, even recently, there's some news we're going to share with you, has been crazy. And Marc has a podcast on the side that really focuses around this mindfulness and this positivity and how to actually gauge your energy in the right way to really better yourself and to improve from a self-development standpoint. So, Marc, thanks for doing this, man.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get started in this whole entrepreneurial journey, and what was your background before Keo?
Yeah, no, and Thanks for having me on. My journey started in the corporate life for probably about 10 years. I was working in pharmaceuticals and health, sales, product management, all of that. But what developed over those years was a morning routine and trying to start the day off with a positive mindset and trying to get ahead of what training was being provided to me that everyone else was getting, for example, right? So I bring that up just because what happened is over the years, I was using a lot of different digital tactics, let's say, to record my thoughts or reflect, I should say. But, reading a book or listening to a podcast, there's always these really impactful questions that come out of listening to the guests, right? And they're questions that guide their journey and whatnot. So if you're writing these things down, and just eventually got frustrated with the options that were out there. I'd be writing them in Apple Notes and copying those and pasting them into another digital app and then actually putting in my reflections. Like, there's got to be
texting yourself, emailing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's got to be a better way to do this and a way to capture these questions from all these amazing people in kind of one space. And that isn't a word processor. That isn't this super complicated setup. It's just kind of simple design, inviting, and gets the job done, essentially. So that's what sparked the idea for Keo, which is it's a digital journal. I often don't use the word journal just because that word comes loaded with a lot of different kind of stereotypes. So what we're really trying to do is stimulate reflection because we're all reflecting in different ways, and we're trying to do this in a way that will resonate with people in their busy lives and help people come out of autopilot, interview and bring in people that are relatable or that we resonate with already, that we're listening to their podcasts, reading their books, watching them on panels, and let's pull out the mental fitness practices from these people, right? So that's basically the Coles Notes version of me and Keo and how it all started.
Have you found I really like the question approach versus the answers approach.
Yeah.
And I think we talked about this on your podcast, but like a great example of this is like, Paulo, which I mentioned last time when we were talking. In his book, like a lot of it is just questions, posing questions, right? And you only kind of see the challenge of actually answering really deep questions when you're filling out like I tried to fill out a TEDx form because I wanted to be a speaker. And they ask you like really deep questions. And when you're faced with these questions, like they seem easy at first, right? Yeah. Like, one of them is, what do you want to accomplish out of life? Like something like that. It sounds kind of simple, right? But it's so macro that when you have to sit there and type it, you're like, I don't even know what to say.
Yeah.
It's so loaded.
Well, it's loaded and it shoots you down a whole other path of reflection, right? And what I find we lack in our society right now is that we just don't make the space to do this, right? It's like a simple question of like, am I happy is pretty loaded, right? Could either be a good question to answer or a bad question, but at least if you're asking the question, start thinking about it, you can start unpacking kind of from within. And the reason why I think, questions are so powerful is if you really think about it, they shape our whole journey, right? Like we're not inventing questions. We're not inventing anything new in terms of writing down your thoughts. It's been around for thousands of years. So then the question on our side is, what's the problem? Like why is this only being seen as impactful or important for yoga instructors or meditation gurus on the top of mountaintops, right? Why is it only that subset of people when in fact, when you listen to any one of, let's say, Tim Ferriss's guests, they're all asking powerful questions. They're all treating their mind as something that needs to be trained and fueled with positive and let's call it nourishing content. But it's been hidden for years. No one's really talking about that. It's thankfully starting to come out. And I mean, that's what we're trying to unleash, like change the language of what this is and how this can benefit your life.
It's true, and even like when you think of like time allocation, everybody, you know, even during the day, they'll allocate time, you know, to improve their work or to improve their leads or to close if you're on the sales side. You know, you'll make time to go to the gym, you'll make time for your friends, you'll make time for social and going out. But like all these distractions kind of reduce the time that you're allocating to kind of sharpen the mind or sharpen the axe.
Yeah.
And it's very true. Like I was reading the book As a Man Thinketh yesterday. Okay. And the whole premise, James Allen, and this was written a very long time ago. It's Tony Robbins, his favorite book. Yeah. And the whole premise is that whole notion that everything that you work on inwardly is going to reflect what you receive outwardly, right? Yeah. And if you focus on the content, like what kind of content you even ingest, right? Or who you spend your time with. And all of these things really affect your mind. And if your mind is in a toxic place, man, it doesn't matter what you have.
So that's what it is, right? We know we know that physically, that, you know, if you break your legs, you know, it's going to be challenging to get around, for example, to really, if your mind is broken, it's no different. So this is the thing. And I think as a society, we're getting there now, right? Like thankfully, mental health, we're actually starting to talk about it a little bit more. So if you don't have your mind and body, like you're kind of useless to yourself and everyone around you, right? So you have to prioritize yourself first. And that's what we're finding with all these guests that we're interviewing, regardless of the industry that they're in, they've done this. 100% are doing this. So, and just to back up, like you mentioned, just making time. What we're also trying to do, because you will eventually just carve out time for reflection if you keep going down these practices. But to start out, it could be as simple as your commute into work or out of work or wherever you're going, and just
kind of fill your time with that.
Yeah, just either, you know, whether it's listening to a podcast or just answering a question, right? Like, what was the best thing that happened today? Or what would I have changed? Like just thinking and coming out of the autopilot will get you started in this journey.
Yeah, I remember you telling me too, because I asked you, remember, like what kind of question do you ask yourself, and what would you recommend that I should apply to myself? And you said every week, even just starting there, like every Friday, ask the question, what did you learn this week? Or what was I grateful for this week? Like what happened that was actually, and it doesn't always have to be like in the most positive light, although that's what we want to focus on, but it could be even like in a constructive, like what was the biggest challenge and what did you learn from it?
Exactly.
You know, because these things have a lot of lessons, whether it's in a positive or challenging connotation. So,
well, with something like that, like mentally, you go through that process, and Tony Robbins says this all the time. Like you can't be angry and grateful at the same time, right? So if you're ending off that process, and it's a Friday, and you're kind of diving into the weekend, like you're automatically going to jump into the weekend happy.
Exactly.
Right. And you capped off the week like, yeah, this is what I learned. But there's so many amazing things that happen during the week. You just need to stop and think about it. Right.
Yeah.
So.
And you know, maybe just to even backtrack a bit, because you weren't, I don't think you were always in the tech kind of startup space, right?
Never in the tech startup space.
I think you were in the pharmaceutical sales side and always on the business development on the front end.
Yeah.
But how did you go from building your career on that side to then, you know, it's just like, what was the link for you to go from that to that?
That's a great question. I think just the challenge of launching a tech company without tech experience, because even my co-founder, brother-in-law, Sine, same thing. I mean, he has experience in networks and website development, but none of us had app development experience, right? Yeah. Which I really, in hindsight, I really think is a massive competitive advantage. I think I've heard this before, and I can see it now, because had we gone into this fully knowledgeable, I don't know if we would have done it. Like we were very naive to what it takes. Like you can't develop an app in your garage anymore and just get it out. I mean, I guess you can, but figuratively speaking, as a consumer group, we expect a lot now, right? Even the reviews that we get into the app when they're negative, it's like, man, it's so hard to get this thing out there. And
right.
like, people just smacking you in the face. Like, you don't have this feature, right? Like, it's hard.
Right.
So for me, it was just, like I said, at the very beginning, it was a scratch your own itch type thing. I was already using digital solutions and knew on my side kind of what I wanted to see.
Right.
And I know I was one of the 300 million people listening to podcasts like Tim Ferriss. There's got to be other people that are facing these struggles, right? Mm-hmm. So we set out, and I didn't leave my job until probably maybe 5 or 6 months into the journey. We were mind mapping the app in evenings. At that time, my wife was pregnant with our child, so like, could have been, if you really think about it, it's probably the worst time to leave a well-paid job with financial security, benefits, and all that, to jump into an industry that you have zero experience with and a child on the way.
Yeah.
Right? But the question I ask myself is, well, what's the worst that can happen? If it fails, in air quotes on fails, I don't believe, as long as you're learning, there's no such thing as failure. But if it fails, you can always go back to the job. I'm not leaving on bad terms. This isn't
burn any bridges.
This isn't a story of like I dreaded going into my job. I actually loved the job. I loved the team. It was a great company, and a lot of what's in Keo, that Japanese flair, is coming from that company, which is a Japanese.
You took those lessons, and yeah,
exactly. So, what's the worst that could happen? Was something I reflect on, and kind of the answer though was that I knew for sure that I would regret not doing this. There was something stronger, at least in me, saying, we've got to try this out. And now looking back, it's been, we're almost 2 years into it.
2 years, yeah. That's great.
And I can't imagine doing anything else. It's just being able to do things like this and connect with incredible people. Like I think we're similar in the sense that we love connecting, right? So for me, there's the business side of it and building it up and all this stuff that no one talks about, dealing with legalities, accounting, and all that stuff. Like, that's not the fun stuff, at least in my opinion, but it has to be done. So it's a learning opportunity and hiring people and stuff like that. But then it's connecting and interviewing people and just being surrounded by such amazing minds, right? That gets me revved up every day.
Do you feel like, I remember, I can't remember who was talking, I think Jordan Peterson was talking about the fact that necessity drives a lot of, I guess a lot of pain in the beginning, in the short term, but most importantly, it drives a lot of success in the long term.
Yeah.
Because and do you feel that when you actually made the jump, you had a kid on the way, your wife is there saying like you're going from a secured full-time job to really an ambiguous journey, right? Yeah. Although it could be a great learning process and the reward is huge, personally and financially, but still, like in the beginning, it's very difficult. That's kind of like the shadow, right?
Yeah.
So going through it, what was it for you that made it a little easier? Like what maybe your mindset?
Well, I mean, thankfully, I've had to use our own principles within Keo just to stay, mentally sane to launch the product. So in doing that, though, and interviewing all these different people, you pick up all these other wellness type practices, right? So I've said this before, it's the most stress that's ever been thrown at me, but the less stress I've ever felt. In terms of managing and seeing triggers and whatnot. So
because you enjoy it though, right?
Well, because I enjoy it, but I feel like I'm doing daily things every morning to fuel my mind and take control. Like I can see, but I feel hyper aware of what's happening around. I'm being pulled out and can kind of see the world at the space level, and it's like a giant chessboard. And I wasn't able to see that before. And I think it's not just Keo, it's meditation, it's a whole bunch of other practices that again are coming up through this journey that have made that manageable, for example. But at the end of the day, and I think it's Elon Musk that says it's like starting a company is like chewing on glass, right? It's swallowing glass. And I totally understand that. So you need, it sounds cliche, but you need a strong purpose driving this. And I have to say ours kind of shifted.
What was your purpose in the beginning?
At the beginning, it was simply like, let's see if we can do this. And I'd like to use a product that like I've been kind of longing for. So super selfish. And it was more like on my brother-in-law's side, it's like, yeah, I've always wanted to kind of experiment with apps. Seems kind of a cool industry. Let's try it out. Yeah, so it started there. And then it got into the point, I would say, where the purpose or the driving factor is like, well, we're not just developing an app. We're starting a wellness company. We started seeing like the app is a tool, the podcast is a tool, and there's many things kind of coming down the pipe. But then it became like, we're building something. We're hiring people. We want to kind of support what we're doing. Then there was a really critical moment where, I don't remember the exact point this happened, but it really shifted probably when the app actually went live, or when our social went out and people started writing in, right? And this is what I was looking for. And you start seeing the actual opportunity to save and change lives, literally through questions. And then now that's really what's fueling us. It's like there's a mental health crisis going on across the world, and if we can have a small hand in reducing those stats, then we'll feel good. And I mean, like I said, I have to use their own pieces. I've had anxiety launching this thing, and I know it works, right? So how do we connect and change the language around this industry of mental fitness and essentially create the mental fitness market along with others, but all to help others, right? Either live at their potential or get them out of the rut that they're in. Yeah. So that now is driving everything. And then even when we have these features by Apple, it's not the amount of people, it's the amount of minds that we're reaching, right? And it could be like someone just potentially just needs a question or just needs one line out of an interview to, that's the piece that will resonate. And hence why we're just trying to make this into a content machine and spit out as much relevant content, interviews, questions, so that maybe that one piece will attract someone, right? And hopefully change their mindset. And
you were just telling me, sort of coming in, that you were on the App Store on the homepage of is it journaling? What
it was the main when you're in the App Store app, the main home screen.
The main home screen.
Yeah.
But the US
store, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Apple's a funny thing. I mean, love them and hate them, but like you never know, what's going on over there. It's we've been super fortunate and are very grateful to have been featured as App of the Day in multiple countries, and thankfully Canada is one of them, given being a homegrown Canadian company. But yeah, Canada, UK, Sweden, Australia, and they don't send you a message. It's like you just all of a sudden either you start getting customer service kind of emails there, or like the server alarms are going off. What is happening? And Apple's data is always usually 2 or 3 days behind, so you rely on some other things. And this time it was Sunday, and that was starting to happen. We started seeing people from the US and like, oh, hang on to the handlebars, just given the size of the U.S. market. We've got to keep this product up, right? Which, knock on wood, it is. And we're day 2 into that journey. But yeah, so again, on the home screen, like you typically see App of the Day, Game of the Day, and now Apple seems to, this is new, they're starting to do daily lists. So
like features almost.
Yeah, so like in the daily list feature yesterday was something like want to start a digital journal, and we were there. We were second on their list, so you don't have to click into that list. You can actually see it as you're scrolling through, which to me just tells me
it's validation. Really.
It's validation, and here you have one of the largest companies in the world, Apple, putting something like they know what's happening, right? And they're putting something out there saying, hey, world, we need to prioritize this stuff. And here we are. And like you said, we haven't run any paid, Instagram or Facebook ads. It's the organic marketing has been just, our experts and people like yourself that are in the app and happy to share it, right? Like that is my goal on any conversation is, not to say, we're not trying to please the thousands of people that are kind of coming through the app, but my goal is that we have just over 100 experts in the app. If I can make you feel like you're doing a great thing being part of our journey, of course, it's always for everyone. Yeah, and that's my goal.
And so how many users do you guys have right now on Keo?
We have right now, I mean, we have over, I have to check now with US, we had about 115,000 downloads for 6 months.
That's crazy, man. I already know this, but every time I hear you say it, it's
well, and on our side too, it was
65 million impressions, right?
Yeah, store impressions, such as again, minds or eyeballs that have across the app. And the thing is, we have no benchmark. Like, is that good? Is that bad? But then,
well, it's definitely good traction in that time frame. I can tell you that.
Yeah, well, and I'm starting to learn just speaking with some other app developers. You know, there's some people actually here in Toronto that I don't know, 6 or 7 apps out, and they're heavily funded and been around for about 10 years. And we don't even have close to 65 million impressions, and we've got 6 or 7 apps, and we've been in the market for 5+ years. So, like, okay, well, I guess that's a good thing, right? Benchmark was 0, right? I mean, if we can touch, 1, 2, 3, lines or lives, then that's how it started.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, well, people clearly want something like this, and then we've got a lot kind of in the pipe to put out to hopefully make the product even better, and the byproduct of that is people living their potential, and hopefully saving some lives as well with the tech. But at the same time, we're a wellness and mindfulness company. So before coming here, we had a team meeting. So just everyone slow down a bit. I know we're on to making sure the servers aren't going to crash and making sure that the next feature set is going out on time. But just think, right? We're in the U.S. store in front of millions of people. Congratulate yourself a little bit, because this isn't easy, right? We're all working on this together. So just take a minute, right? Wow, this is pretty amazing.
You almost want to embody those practices that you guys talk about from Keto.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Because it's so, that's the thing with these practices. It's everything's going against you to make that difficult, right? Like we're always rushing to another meeting, or life is happening fast. So you have to consciously try to pull out a little bit.
Just take a pause, yeah. Be like,
yeah,
I'm thankful for this, or
yeah,
like that was a good win, and
yeah,
yourself
exactly.
out, right?
And for me, just having all these conversations so frequently, for me, it's a trigger all the time. Like, yeah, all right, you're right. I should just breathe at one point today. Focus on that. But that's coming from a podcast, or either an interview that I'm doing, or something, or a prompt that's coming up through the app. So you have to kind of fuel your mind with that, or you just get sucked into the funnel, right?
What would you say has been your biggest challenge right now? Just even getting to this milestone, if you want to call it, and just even if you look back, because how long has it been now since inception to now? What was your time frame?
Yeah, I think it's been just under 2 years. I say
like working on it. I'm saying like idea from mind to paper. That's inception to me. So. Oh
yeah, so it started 2 years ago in January, where the idea came up. Okay. Then I left my job in November of that same year. So from that time forward, it was, like I said, mind mapping in the evenings and all that kind of stuff. And then we went to a couple conferences and just started pitching people the idea to validate it. And we got enough traction from that validation that, because then the turning point was, okay, well, and this is where the naive part comes in. We could just build the app and put it out there. Just build the app is the loaded statement. So I'll come back to that. That has been a struggle. Or actually put a plan in place and actually leverage a lot of brand strategies that I was deploying in the healthcare space into this world, right? Like create, because we had no brand, we had no network, and we had no product at that point, right? It was just like kind of a dream, and this is what we wanted to do. Well, then started reaching out to people like the Kevin Roses that I was listening to their content, right? So reaching out to them and building up a network so that when we launched, we were launching to a group of people that had a reach around, at that point, 14 million people, right? And these are no different than when you're launching products in healthcare. So then they start talking to their colleagues, and it's the same thing. But to answer your question, the struggle, I'm not a technical co-founder. Brother-in-law's not a technical co-founder. I mean, we went through 2 dev shops in different countries.
Just maybe for people listening. So to answer that challenge for you and your brother-in-law, you outsourced the development, right? Like that's kind of what you wanted to do. Yeah,
well, I mean, we were doing that through some guidance of some others that we were kind of connecting with. They weren't just like random, Google search dev shops.
Yeah. You did your due diligence, but for a lot of people listening, because we're all in that, like I was in the same predicament.
Yeah.
Luckily, my co-founders are technical, like in the sense that they can develop apps. But to your point, a lot of people listening are probably like in the same predicament. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. So my advice on that, if I had to redo, and again, it's one of those things looking back in hindsight, that we've grown so much going through those
That's great.
experiences. At the time, that's where you're swallowing that broken glass that Mr. Elon talks about. But I think if you don't have a technical founder, you do need someone that's either in-house or that, you know, is in the same city, exactly, that can scope out what you want to do in technical language. Because that's the thing, like, nothing against some of these dev shops, but they're working with massive clients that, you know, might just, you know, maybe it's like IBM is outsourcing something, like one feature, and here's what you need to do, and they'll deliver it. And it's just, I asked for this, and they delivered this.
Right.
Not, this is our idea, we kind of want to do this, like this is how we feel it should look, type thing. We always had design internally, thankfully, but like, this is what we're thinking. That's a disaster waiting to happen, because then it comes back, and it happened. It was so frustrating. We got to probably 80% of the app actually launching, and it was just like full of bugs. And you know, we're bug testing, right, while still trying to build up the business, right? So everyone's kind of all hands on deck, and you report the bugs. The app would come back again. That bug is fixed. 15 others now have arrived, right? So it literally at one point felt like it's never going to launch ever. Like, I can't see this ever launching if it continues like this, right? So anyway, long story short, you know, more people kind of came in the loop or in the journey, and it's like, let's get rid of this dev shop. We're going to go to this other one that, you know, was working with other companies, again, highly advised, and you know, that didn't really work out either. So that's been the challenge. And now we've got some internal development, and we're making some really good partnerships with people here in the city as well. So that's feeling really,
and also the proximity helps, because if there are any challenges, at least like if they're based somewhere in Canada and work closer to you, then at least you can have those conversations.
Yeah. Proximity, language, culture, and
speed. Business.
Yeah,
speed.
Speed's a big one. So that's the thing too. Like, you know, we have all our designers in house. We can quickly change something, right? Like, you can kind of make that call when you're operating with different agencies and whatnot. You know, there's a process, right? So yeah, so that's been the hardest part. But at the same time, that's also where, you know, when we're in that point where, you know, the development was really struggling. I remember the decision was made, well, okay, this sucks. We're going to get through it. We'll figure our way out. But I'm going to double down on the networking piece and the business development, and just keep getting more people in the hopper. And at that time, we didn't have a podcast. I was recording the interviews, but writing them up and stuff. Let's get more people going. And then through that, you start getting introduced to others, right? And it just kind of keeps growing exponentially. So,
and you know, maybe like as you think of the next 2 to 5, right? What do you really want to kind of look back and say, like, this is what we've done? What would be that big milestone for you?
Love that question. I'd like to show, actually, you know, for the individual, that they are receiving insights, and not just data dumps of like, you've written this many words or you've done this much reflection or answered these questions, but like true insights that if they do X on this day of the week at this time, based on your age group or whatever you're doing, you know, you have a predicted outcome of awesomeness, let's call it, right? Or your mind is going to be better from that. Ultimately, if we can save lives, that's the other part, right?
People going through depression.
Yeah, exactly. Again, like just going back to Tony Robbins' quote, and challenge anyone listening or watching, just do it, right? If you're having a shitty day, just stop and think, what's something that made you smile recently? Like immediately, your mindset's out of that, right? So looking back, I mean, our main purpose is we want to provide people with the right question, the right time in their life, and in the right context. That's kind of what's key, right? Like you ask me a question when I need it at the right time in my life can actually change something.
Just even to pivot, like where you want to go, right?
Yeah.
Like that question could, as you said, like in an instant, it's not necessarily going to erase the memory of a challenge, but at least if you do that, it's almost like a muscle. You become hardwired to focus on, okay, well, what's the good in the outcome? You know, it's just funny because there's this, it's like a 2-minute, quote unquote, motivational video that Joko Willink put together. He's a former Navy SEAL, Spell this author. He has a podcast. It's really cool on YouTube. Just type in Good Joko, Gocko, and the whole it's 2 minutes of him when he was commanding his troops. They would come to him with a complaint. They'd say, "Oh well, we don't have enough equipment," or "Oh, we're being outweighed here. There's no way we're gonna win." And he just look at them and be like, "Good, good.
Yeah.
You don't have equipment. Good. Figure it out. Yeah. You're overweight. Good. Get a gym membership and start moving.
Yeah.
You feel like you're underpaid. Good. Like it's just mindset, man. And he's been able to train. And I'm not saying it's easy. Like we all go through it. I certainly have my battles and my challenges with bettering myself, my mental state, especially when personal things come about. But to your point, it's like if you have these resources and a platform you can go to, especially when it's mobile friendly and it's on it's on the app store. It's easy, it's free to download.
Yeah. You just have to find what works for you. I mean, this has by far been the hardest thing I've ever done, by far in my life. But at the same time,
most rewarding.
Yeah, 100% most rewarding, and just my own personal development, mentally and physically, like that. No matter what happens, can never be taken from me.
And how do you practice mindfulness every day? Like, what are some things you do? Maybe for someone watching, actually start doing this.
I mean, for me, I've always been. This is where it all started. Was I was always a morning person, so getting up, anywhere between 5:30 and 6, and spending at least an hour on myself. And that, I think, what's worked again for me personally is it doesn't matter what's happening during that hour. It just means what's important is you take that hour for yourself.
Right. You dedicate that time.
Exactly. So some of those days, I'm not writing every day, right? And I'm not always using it in digital form. I have notebooks too. I have nothing that's pen and paper. But some days I'm writing. Some days I'm going to the gym 5 days a week. That's always in there. Some days I'm meditating. But again, I'm reading, listening to podcasts, always taking that morning to basically set your mind up for success. Fuel, just like you think about it, when you're fueling your body with good food, you feel good, right? You fuel your mind with good things, you're going to feel good as well, right? So that's one of the things. And then again, just through this journey, just being very aware. Even coming downtown Toronto, I listen to a lot of podcasts, but it's okay sometimes not to have earbuds in your ear and just actually pay attention to what's happening around you.
Just go for a walk,
Go for a walk, whatever. Or if you're on the subway going to a meeting and you just look around, there's a lot of interesting things on that train that you probably never notice. And it just, what it does is it just compounds the practice or the benefits of these practices. Because when you're doing that, you're training your mind so that then when you're in a crisis mode of some sort, it's way easier to kind of pull out of that crisis and slow down and actually see the plays. Mm-hmm. And that just becomes, that just comes from the training. Just like if the day you're going to go run the marathon, that's not where the work is done on the marathon day, right? It's all before. So it's the same thing.
And so for someone listening to this right now, what would be, I ask this to all my guests really, someone say in their early 20s, mid 20s, 30s, whatever, wants to start a venture, is maybe an aspiring entrepreneur. What's that one piece of advice that you give someone right now listening that's really helped you?
Again, it sounds cliche, but really figure out why you want to do this. Mm-hmm. What's the purpose behind it? Because you hear this all the time, and I was in this as well. I was listening to Gary, and I still listen to Gary Vee and all these people, right? And they say it all the time. This world of entrepreneurship is glorified, right? It's become if you're an entrepreneur, you're a celebrity. What many don't realize, and you hear this, right? I heard it too. I'm like, okay, but I want to try it out. It's hard. It's really hard, right? There's tears. There's the glass analogy is legit, right? And I'm not saying the reward won't come, but you have to find the reward in the journey, right? So that, I think that would be my piece of advice that I've really found helpful is it's not the fact that we're sitting in the US App Store right now. That's the exciting part. It is, obviously. It is, yeah, but it's the fact that they've recognized our work up until now to get us into that spot in the App Store. That's what's exciting. And it's that journey of all the no's from reaching out to people being interviewed or like listening to a podcast, be like, I want that guy or girl on our show or part of the app. Like, how can I get to them? Who's in my network that knows them? Like, we're
figuring it out.
Figuring out that
it's like
whole,
a puzzle.
That whole thing. Like going to the lawyer tomorrow to like deal with employment contracts and stuff. That doesn't sound glorious, but like we've got to figure that stuff out, right? Like, so you have to find the fun in all of this stuff, or it's just gonna suck, right? So, because the way I sum up entrepreneurship is it's just, and this happens almost on a daily basis. It's a massive high and then a massive low. So ride the high as long as you can and get out of the low as fast as you can. That's the way I try to treat it.
I love that, man. Well, Marc, thanks again for being on this podcast, man. And it's definitely exciting, honestly, to hear the progress and how quickly you guys have built up traction through Kyo. So for everyone watching, if you haven't checked it out, I'm going to show you one more time. It's KYO. All right. It's really, really cool, super simple to use. And you can have different kind of packages, or they call them packs, or interviews that you can discover. Everybody from Adam Grant to Monica Gold. Like, there are some really cool people on this app, as well as Marc's podcast. So if you haven't downloaded it now, check it out. Marc, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.